So it's good to see everybody. So I want to start with the Hayom Yom. Tonight is the 23rd of Tavis, and it's interesting because on our Rosh, we had a birthday gathering. It was the middle of Hanukkah. That's right. We had our Farbrengen. And in our Hanukkah party, Farbrengen birthday party, we had a lot of Tavis birthday people. We had the teaching that in Tavis, the issue, the issue to deal with is anger, which was very illuminating for me at the time, because I had actually felt like I was dealing with a lot of issues of anger, and I didn't even realize I was dealing with issues of anger. Hi, Linda, welcome. And when I read that Tavis is a time to process anger, somehow I found it very helpful. Just, I'd never really focused on the fact that we actually get a month to process on anger. And as a people, we're going through a lot of stuff, and it's very easy to get angry with everybody who doesn't think things, should be solved the way we think they should be solved, and people have different opinions than us. And it's interesting that this is a month where our emotions can get kind of activated and not always in such a positive way. Put on top of that we in the middle of a war, very intense war right now. And then put on top of that we start reading Sefer Shmot, the book of names, but Shmot actually means names, but really in English it's Exodus. And before we can have an exodus, we have an experience of exile and oppression. And so in this week's Parsha, we start talking about and looking at the Yidden experiencing the squeezing and the pressure of exile. And there's a lot to say about that, and I'll say it and we'll get to it. But just to start with the Hayom Yom, which seems quite apropos to all of those themes. So the Hayom Yom for the 23rd of Tavis, which is actually tonight and tomorrow. So it says, groaning by itself won't do a bit of good. So just in case you thought groaning was an effective strategy, groaning by itself won't do a bit of good. A groan is only a key to open the heart and eyes so as not to sit there with folded arms, but to plan orderly work and activity, each person wherever he can be effective, to campaign for. Now you might be thinking, the Rebbe is telling us to be active, and the Rebbe is telling us to get involved, and the Rebbe is telling us not to sit with folded arms. What's he going to tell us to go and be active with? So he says, each person wherever he can be effective, to campaign for bolstering Torah. This is the Rebbe's strategy for fighting darkness in the world. Spreading Torah and the observance of mitzvot. One person might do this through his writing, another with his oratory, another with his wealth. So the Rebbe is clearly saying that when we in a situation where we feel uncomfortable, we feel like we in the olive press, we feel we're being squeezed, we're living in the midst of all this turbulence and all this suffering and all of this difficulty, we need to, when it says here, campaign and bolster Torah and spread Torah, so that could even be abstract for some people. What does that mean? And I would like to rephrase it and say, connect to your soul root, connect to your soul connection, connect to, generating light, connect to Hashem, connect to the Torah, to the teachings of what makes us distinctively us and what are we really fighting for. So, of course, this doesn't negate the people that are in the army, the IDF, the holy fighters. Rabbi Yossi Jacobson gave a beautiful speech on the fact that the soldiers are incredibly holy.
I heard that one.
If we in the army, so we go to fights, there's no question about it. But if we're not in the army and we're not 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 35-year-old, 40-year-old men living in Eretz Israel, and we're here, so the Rebbe is very much of that opinion that we contribute by taking care of the kind of people we are, what are we connected to, what are we emitting, almost like if we little frequency antennae, what vibes, there's Susan, that's for you, what vibes are we putting out into the world, how much light are we putting out into the world, are we connecting to the truth of who we are we somehow when we do mitzvot, whether it's lighting Shabbos candles, putting on kosher mezuzot on our doorposts, helping the sick, helping the poor, visiting the sick. It's almost hard to imagine, like, how can that be helping the soldiers in a tunnel or the hostages? But we believe that we're living in a holographic reality. And when we do good, that good sends out a emission of good in the world that, like we've spoken before, the butterfly effect, it kind of somehow lands on the shoulder of a soldier and he says, oops, I need to turn left now, not right now, and saves himself from something that would have been bad had he turned left. This is the approach that at least my teacher has been pushing for as long as I was exposed to anything of the Rebbe, that when there's darkness in the world, we have to increase in light. So everybody knows, everybody's saying Tehillim, everybody's doing extra mitzvot, but it is still a hard thing to grapple with, that to solve the external problems, we repair the internal reality and we elevate and we refine and we work on the small city in order to heal the big world. It's kind of, it is spiritual and mystical, and it's not the first thing we think about. We think about doing, and all the things we do, social advocacy and all of that, it's all important. But the Rebbe is saying that mitzvot are a huge thing, and, to appreciate the value of that. So that's the Hayom Yom. And it's kind of like our warm up teachings to start talking about the Parsha. And the Parsha is about exile. And like the idea of exile also being looked at, and it's very intense to read the Parshiot now, because the Jews were oppressed, they were experiencing darkness, they were experiencing powers stronger than them, putting them, through hard labor. There's a lot of parallels. When we read the Tehillim of David HaMelech, he's being pursued by an enemy, he's being misunderstood, he doesn't want to look like a fool in front of other people, he doesn't want his nation to seem foolish in front of other nations, not to be treated badly. Like, I feel there's never been a time in history where all those words were more apropos to our experience. So when we talk about getting out of Egypt, there's always going to be that parallel experience. It's the people, then as a group, the nation of Israel coming in the previous book, the book of Bereshit, we looked at all those personalities, the personality of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, all of Yaakov's sons, and then Yaakov passing away, and the Pasha being called Vayachi, because even though he dies, he lives on in all of his children, and all of his children carry on his mission statement into the world, so it's like he doesn't die. And then we come into the book of Shmot, and we say that whatever the experiences are of this exile is actually the olive press, squeezing the olives, squeezing the olives, squeezing the olives, and what comes out is a bottle of olive oil called the nation of Israel. That's the oil that in the pressing of the experience of Mitzrayim, we come out as a nation. We come out with an identity. We come out having been formed. And then all the ideas in Torah that we've learned so many times before, especially when we were looking at Avraham Avinu, and we spoke about the fact that Avraham Avinu had 10 trials. And the 10 trials, one of the things that we talk about the 10 trials is that anytime we read in the Torah of a trial, a nisayon, it's a challenge that brings out of the person facing that challenge their innate capacities, their innate potentials. And unless there's that squeezing and that testing, the innate potentials don't really come. So it's sort of a little bit unfortunate to think that we have to be squeezed. And do we really have to be squeezed? Well, the good news is that the narrative is changing. And the old narrative is we had to be squeezed, squeezed, squeezed in order for our potential to come about. But the messianic vision is that we don't have to be squeezed so much for the potential to come out. But the reality is that right now, 2024, January 2nd, or now we're January 3rd, we are intensely being squeezed. So even though it's not fashionable anymore to talk about suffering, and it's much more fun to have all those Geula classes where we say the birurim, the work of the galus has been done, and the work of birurim is when we're separating good from evil. And, you know, it's like I spoke last week about the ball of yarn, and we have to untangle it. There's so many beautiful teachings on the times of Mashiach when we've sort of surpassed that and we can move to higher and higher levels of just experiencing the bliss. But apparently we're not there yet. Exhibit A, our reality, the world, Israel, the army, the suffering, the reality. So we got to go back. And when we look at Egypt and all the descriptions of Egypt, we got to pay, you know, very careful attention because it's happening to us now. We are, anytime we in Meitzarim, the narrow straits, what I'm calling the oil, the olive press, anytime we're being pressed is basically an experience of Mitzrayim. And, you know, there's always, when I grew up in South Africa, it was a politically very volatile time. And there were a lot of people on campus involved in the political struggle. And it was very fashionable to say the personal is political and the political is personal. And that's true now, that we have this experience of the Jewish people fighting Hamas and the world opinion and anti-Semitism and all of that. That's the big scale, the political reality and the nation, the Jewish nation. And then there's our own personal experiences of reality. And in our own personal experiences of reality, there's us facing our own interpersonal relationships, our own insecurities, our fears, whatever our own places of constriction are. And the interesting thing is that we've got to deal with both simultaneously, and hopefully the reality of studying the Torah and looking at the Torah stories help us to look at our own stories and get out of our own personal Mitzrayim in a way, because we're encouraged by what's going on with them getting out of Egypt.
So, Bracha, can I bring something up that came from what you were saying?
Yes.
You know, the idea when you said Exodus, I know we call it Exodus, and I know that it's called Shmot, names. And I understand that we have to be squished in order to, get out the best, the pure of ourselves. But what I never thought about before until you brought up these things is that maybe there's something in the fact that it's named names. Is there something restrictive in our names? Is there something in exploring one's Hebrew name or the names of our forefathers and the names of the 70 who went down to Egypt that can give us qualities that we need to work on to think about Mashiach, shall we say?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. So you said, is there something restrictive about the names? And I would actually say there's something redemptive about.
But I've always thought there was something redemptive, but now I'm also wondering if there's something restrictive. You know how they say in Nigunim, like if you sing a Nigun, it has no restrictions because there's no words. Once you give something words, you're giving it a container. And so that maybe it's our own experience of a name that restricts us, even though it's not truly restrictive, that we have to find
you're going very deep. And there is a place where there is I learned this actually from Diane, from her book. So Diane Bloomfield, she has her book, Torah Yoga, and she has a chapter on Egypt, leaving Egypt, and she talks about an interesting thing. She speaks about the fact that the word Meitzarim has tsar, Meitzar, and it also has Mayim. It has tsar and Mayim. That tsar and Mayim, tsar is the constriction, Mayim is the kind of the expansiveness, but leaving Mitzrayim is leaving the constrictedness and the expansiveness and going to a place that's beyond both of those two things. So
what's the name of that book?
It's called Torah Yoga, actually, and it's Diane has chapters on different themes where she writes down like hashkafic things, and then she connects it to, she gives some postures that are related to those chapters, but the postures are kind of just regular, but the chapters have an introduction, leaving Egypt, finding rest, finding true self, etc., where she brings a lot of nice Torah sources. So generally, when we speak about the names, we say that this is a good thing that the Jews did. They kept their identity, they kept their clothes, they kept their names, that's in a way part of the key to getting out is the name and attaching to our true identity and our true reality. But Helene's bringing up another point, which I think if we fast forward to right now, today, again, January 3, right? Not 2, January 3, 2024, I would say that in order for us to really get into a geula mindset, a messianic mindset, we have to get past all the labels. We got to get past lots of labels. One of my favorite conversations about geula and labels is to go back to the tree of life and Gan Eden and the two trees, the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. So in the tree of knowledge of good and evil, everything is labeled and everything is either good or bad. And in the tree of life, we've transcended all those boxes and all those labels, and we get to a place which is beyond judgments and beyond labels. So that might be a kind of connection to what you say.
Thank you.
So, all right. So I don't know if I want to say so much more about the introduction. Just in order to get out of our personal Egypts, it's good also to identify where we become face to face with different places of our own restrictions, our places where we feel less expanded, less generous, less loving, less positive, less optimistic, more fearful. Remember, we always, in Chassidus, there's always two main emotions. There's love, which is love of God, love of connection, there's love and there's fear. And fear can be, I'm so in awe of God that I don't want to do anything wrong. I'm humbled, but there's also fear as in I'm constricting myself. I'm afraid. There's opening and there's closing. So whenever we feel that there's something, I just came across yesterday or the day before a excerpt from Albert Einstein writing to his daughter, whose name was Litzel or Libela or Labela. I can't remember her name, if anybody remembers it. And it's astounding. Apparently, he gave his daughter instructions and he said, don't publish these letters until 20 years after I've passed away or something. And in that letter to his daughter, he says he's studying and studying, and he realizes that the most powerful force in the world is love. Love is this outward connecting, bonding, expansive energy. And it's a beautiful letter. If I can find it again, maybe I'll post it on the WhatsApp chat. And then, so that's the part of us that's potentially can connect to the Geula energy. And then there's that fearful, restrictive, constrictive energy. That's the Meitzarim energy, the Mitzrayim energy. So we have to look in our own personal experiences of our day-to-day and see where are we opening and where are we closing. Not or as in God, I don't want to do the wrong thing. I want to obey your mitzvahs, but closing as in I'm closing off my connection, like I'm constricting. So that's the idea of finding our own story. And there's just a couple other things that I wanted to say before we go into a specific piece of the Parsha that I want to speak about. Just also the idea of leaving Egypt, according to Kabbalah, is connecting to what's called in Chassidut also Moichin de Gadlut, expanded consciousness. Being in Mitzrayim is Mochin de Katnut, constricted consciousness, small mind or large mind. And mind, we don't mean just mind, we mean, expanded consciousness. Okay, one more introductory statement, and then we're getting into specifics. And we're going to speak about this more, but and in fact, we're going to speak about this right now. Okay, so let's start. This is going to be a great segue into our Parsha. So I've talked for a long time, and I kind of want to get into, where's my, there, okay. Oh, wait, there's somebody still waiting to come in. I hope Sorry wasn't waiting there for too long.
Oh,
Sorry, I hope you weren't waiting there for a long time. I didn't see you. It was covered up. But anyway, now you're there. So, okay. So everybody knows the story. Well, I don't know if everybody knows the story, but I'll try to run through the story as quickly as I can. At the end of last week's Parsha, Yosef says, oh, thank you. So Karen, can you put that letter on the chat for everyone, right? Okay, good. Okay.
That is beyond my technological capabilities. I'm so sorry, but I sent it to you on your Torah link.
Oh, okay.
we gotta help you here.
Hey, you sent it on the Torah, on the...
You did it right, yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. I knew you had it in you.
Where were you last week when I wanted her to Zoom?
Yeah, okay, so a quick review. Yosef is the most beloved, he's a leader, he saves Egypt. Because of him, they don't have a famine and everything. And then we open up into this week's Parsha, and it says there's a new king, and he doesn't know Yosef. We're not going to look at that right now. How is that possible? So basically, the time when the Jews are having a good experience in Egypt is over. And what happens is that they get more and more oppressed, and they multiplying, and they becoming fruitful and abundant. And we spoke about this as the first instance of anti-Semitism, when Pharaoh says the nation of Israel is more numerous and stronger than we are. Let us deal with them cleverly. Hava naschachem lo. Let us be shrewd about how we're going to deal with this threat of this powerful nation. And then he says a ridiculous thing. He says, if they become so powerful, maybe they'll side with our enemies and they'll fight against us. So we've got to control them, oppress them, afflict them. Thus begins the enslavement and the embitterment, and then the discussions with the midwives that if Jewish babies are born, they should be killed. God forbid, but that's what it says. And it says the midwives, Yocheved and Miriam, were the first acts of civil disobedience that we learn in the Parsha, in the Torah. Two women, they decide not to listen to Pharaoh, and they don't listen. And then Pharaoh calls them and he says, why are you not, doing what I told you? And they have a great excuse. They say, these Jewish women, they don't even need us. They have their babies so fast. By the time we come, the baby's already born. We can't really be held responsible. And then he says, okay, well, if they're going to be born, every boy thrown into the Nile. And we've spoken before about the word zachor being related to the word zachar. Zachor means male, zachar means remember. So he's throwing their national memory of who they are, trying to throw it into the Nile so that they should forget themselves, forget their identity, forget their meaning, forget their purpose, mostly forget their identity, forget their connection to God. And then we know Moshe gets put into the little basket. He's saved. And then he grows up in Pharaoh's court. I think maybe there's even a Broadway show about it on right now. And then he grows up in the court, and he goes out and he sees cruelty, and he knows he's a Jew because, according to different opinions, he stayed at home being nursed by his own mother. Some opinions say even till 10 or 12. I can't remember, but a long time. So he knows he's Jewish. He sees what's going on. Then he gets involved in that altercation, and he kills the Mitzri, the Egyptian man, using God's name, and he has to run away because he's afraid that someone heard about will hear about what he's done, because so he runs away. That's where, and then he goes to Midian, where we have all these shidduch stories at the well, that in the Bible, if you're looking for a shidduch, you go to the well. So Eliezer found a shidduch for his master's son at the well, Rivka. Yaakov found his shidduch, Rochel, at the well. And then Moshe heard that that's a good way to find a shidduch. So he went to a well also, and he, at the well, he saw that the women were not treated very well. And it turned out that they were the daughters of Yitro, and they were not treated very well because Yitro had abandoned all his idol worship. And as a result, they were doing their best to cancel culture. Is that the way? Culture, cancel culture him. Hi, Devorah, it's nice to see you joining us. Welcome. I see you there.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you. So he immediately helps the girls with the getting water for their sheep and everything, and the girls come home much faster than usual. And their father says, "Who helped you?" And they say, "An Egyptian man." And the father says, "Well, why didn't you invite him home for dinner? Why don't you invite him to come to our house to eat bread?" Which is Torah's modest way of saying maybe he can marry one of you. So, and Moshe does, he marries Tzipporah, the eldest daughter of Yitro, and that's where we finding the story. Okay, so here we are. So Moshe was pasturing the flocks of Yitro, his father-in-law, the chief of Midian, and he led the flocks after the free pasture land, and he came to the mountain of Hashem, El Har HaElokim. It's an interesting name. It's called the Mountain of God. Rashi says because of what's still going to happen there later. Didn't happen yet, but it has that name in the Torah. And an angel of Hashem. So let's read this in Hebrew. V'yera malach Hashem elav v'lavat eish mitoch hasneh. And an angel of Hashem appears to him in the middle, in the flame of fire, within the snare. The word snare is a thorn bush. V'yar, and he looks. V'hine, and behold, hasneh bo'ar, ba'esh. The snare is burning with fire. V'hasneh einenu uchal. But the snare does not get consumed. So can somebody just count for me the amount of times that the word snare is used in that one line?
Yeah.
Base. The word snare is a thorn, is a bush.
One, two, three.
Oh, you have to read. I guess you have to read 3 and yeah, okay, 3.
Three.
In the next pasuk it
Three.
says, so Moshe says, Vayome Moshe, V'surana ve'er'a es hama'er hagadol hazeh. Let me look and see this incredible thing that's going on. Madua lo yiv'ar hasner. Why is the bush not burning up? So that's the 4th time the word snare is used. And then V'yar Hashem kisar. And Hashem notices that he turns, lirot, to look. And only when he notices that Moshe turns to look, V'yikra elav, he calls to him Elokim, mitoch hasneh. That's the 5th time the word snare is used. Mitoch hasneh, V'yomer Moshe, Moshe, V'yomer, what is the answer? Who wants?
Hineni.
Hineni.
Here I am.
It's one of
It's
my
always-
favorite
that's the big
words.
one, right.
Hineni. I
Right.
am here. I'm ready. I'm available. You know, what do you need? So before we even move forward in breaking down this beautiful happening, this incredible story over here. This idea that the word snare is mentioned 5 times is very significant. And it's significant because there's a comparison between different kinds of light and the concealment of light and the revelation of light. So when in the whole Torah do we first get a connection to light? The word light or the word or.
Voracious.
Light,
Gracious.
Or.
era or something, the light before even let there be light, the light before that.
Right. So if I wanted to, I could quickly bounce I've got this nice Chumash page on here, so I'm not going to bounce to the first verse in Bereshit, the very, very first verse in, not the very first, but very close to the first. V'yome Elokim yahi or, and Hashem said, let there be light. V'yahi or, and there was light. V'yikra Elokim et ha'or, kitov, and he called that light good. V'yivdel Elokim bein ha'or uvein ha'choshech, and he separated between the light and the darkness. V'yikra Elokim la'or yom, and he called the light day. U'lechoshech kara laila, and he called the night the dark night. V'yehi erev, v'yehi boker yom echad. And that was the first day. And how many times is the word light mentioned?
3 or 4.
5 times. The word light is mentioned 5 times, and the word snare is
Just
mentioned
5 times.
5 times. So just like in the beginning of getting out of Egypt, we have this idea of the word snare coming 5 times. We have in the beginning of the creation of the world, the word or 5 times. So the light of leaving Egypt is compared to the light of the first day of creation. The darkness of Egypt is compared to the darkness before creation, that darkness, that tohu or vohu. Tohu or vohu, does anyone have a direct translation of tohu or vohu?
Direct?
Like
I'll grab my chumash.
Oh, okay. Get your chumash. Tohu uvohu.
It's like void and empty, something like that.
Boy, a void and an emptiness.
I mean, I just threw that out, but if you want the exact from the chumash.
Tohu uvohu. We've often spoken about the power, the energy of tikkun as opposed to the energy of tohu. What is tohu? What is tohu? Not tofu, because we know what tofu is, but what is tohu? We said Esav had the energy of tohu, but Yaakov had the energy of tikkun. Yaakov had the vessels of tikkun. We say that when Mashiach is going to come, there's going to be a good combination of the light of tohu in the vessels of tikkun. What am I talking about? What is?
You know what? It just says astonishingly empty.
Okay, so
Well,
that's not
that's
such
all
a
at once.
reliable.
Right.
Tohu
No, it's a
uvohu.
good
Remembering
chumash.
right, that tohu has something to do with nature, like kind of like brute force of nature, kind of like
It's-
like
it's-
raw, untamed nature or something like that.
Well, I like raw, untamed. Let's say raw, untamed energy.
Okay.
It's raw, untamed, it's potential, but it's going all over the place. It doesn't have a direction. It's just a tumult. So before the world was created, before God brought order and light into the world, it was tohu uvohu. It was potential, but it wasn't organized. And in a way, the Egypt is another aspect of tohu. It's not Eretz Yisrael. It's not, our light being revealed. It's oppressive. It's compared. So Mitzrayim is compared to this tohu and vohu, this darkness of Egypt.
But
And-
tohu, I think, is also considered like chaos.
And chaotic, yes. There's a chaotic aspect to it. So the same God who's saying, Yehi or, I'm going to bring in light. So now we have this light starting, the light of redemption in our Geula story is starting off with this snare, with this experience of this bush that's not, this thorn bush that's not burning up. Before we look at the Rashi, I just want to say, so there's a story of fire, really, a story of light. There's the light in Gan Eden, that light that God made, we call it the Or HaGanuz, right? He made it right at the beginning of creation, and it was this powerful light. And then he said, you know what, this light can get into the wrong hands, or this light is too powerful for now, the world's not ready for it, so he put it away. And we say we see that light, the light shone in the world for 36 hours, and then Adam and Chava did the Chet, Eitz Hadas, before Shabbos, and the light was able to stay till the end of Shabbos, and then we see it in the 36 candles of Hanukkah. Yaakov, when he crossed the Yabok to get a little jar of oil, somehow that oil is connected to this special quality. And then now we got, so that's the Or HaGanuz. And now we have the light was contained in our mothers and our fathers in the story of Bereshit. And now somebody needs to mute themselves because I'm hearing background sounds. And then there's a light that's going to start with the burning bush, but it's going to have a few different roles in this redemption out of Egypt. It's going to be the burning bush. There's going to be an interesting thing with light, with fire and water. In the getting out of Egypt, there's a fire and water. Who knows what that is? Fire and water.
A plague of hail.
The hail.
Mhm.
Fire and water are holding together in a very unnatural way. They make peace. And then it says that, I never knew this before, but fire was present when the Mitzrim were running after the Yidden when they were crossing the Yam Suf, and somehow there was water, but there was fire in that story also. And when else do we have fire in the getting out of Egypt?
The lead us in Egypt with the cloud of glory and the fire. When at night.
The fire leading them all the way. And then we have the fire of Har Sinai, right? The fire of Har Sinai. And then things get not so good. We have not a great fire. We have a strange fire. Can anyone remember when we have a strange fire?
The calf. The
Uh-huh.
Chet Egel. The Chet.
Chet HaEgel, thank you
Egel.
very much. And then we have the tikkun of the Chet HaEgel, the fixing of the Chet HaEgel, and then we have a good, again, a beautiful good fire. Anybody know what that is?
The first Mishkan?
Well, and all through the Mishkan, they put korbanot, they put sacrifices on the altar, and the fire comes down and consumes that altar, consumes the sacrifices. And we have a very pronounced,
Menorah that he lit, right?
we say
The
again?
menorah from the Mishkan that was lit because that fire stayed, right? All
Right, there's a
By the
big
menorah,
mitzvah.
right? You mean the menorah?
well, I'm using the wrong term, probably not menorah, the candelabra. What have you?
No, you're quite right. The Mizbeach, the altar, there's a Matisiyahu who sings a beautiful song about it, that the fire must never go out. Eish Tamid, it must burn eternally. The fire must continue to burn, that there's a fire that's always burning. And just to conclude this, where do we see the fire now? Or where should we hope to have the fire now? Does anybody know? I mean, this is a trick
Shabbos
question because
candles?
I don't know
It has
how
to
you're
do with
supposed to
Mashiach,
know
but you don't know
what I'm
exactly.
thinking.
Shabbos candles?
No, it has to do with Mashiach, but we definitely, we know the sounds we're gonna hear, but what we're gonna see, that I don't know.
Well, I'm not
That's
looking in the
what you're
future, I'm
getting at.
looking in the present. And I know
Oh.
it's a trick question because you have
Gaza.
to get into my own head to know the answer.
We should be burning Gaza. That's where the fire should be.
Right.
Well, Linda, I'm so happy that you said that because you almost hit it on the nail on the head. One, like a little more squeeze, and I feel I'm going to get it. We always, there's a, when Matisiyahu says the fire must burn continually, and we don't have a base of Mikdash anymore, what do we have?
In the shul, we
The
have it
shuls.
by the Aaron Cohen.
Tools. And in our
The Ner
own,
Tamid,
I
the
have
Ner Tamid,
The hearts,
stand up.
the Ner Tamid.
Oh, our heart, you said,
the
okay.
shama, the soul, the heart.
Right. We have to make sure that that is the fire that's burning within us all the time. That fire is supposed to, that mizbeach, that sacrifice on the altar, we, in a way, we say every time before we daven, right? We put our own animal self on the altar. There's a part of us that we've got to be burning, consuming our animal aspects. We say that any mitzvah we do is, our soul is a little flame of the godly fire, right? We have that flame within us. So let's look at, oh, so
I missed the
before,
answer because my dumb phone was ringing, sorry.
say again?
I missed the answer because my dumb phone was ringing and I,
Oh, the
say, what's
answer
the
is that
answer?
it's our own neshamas, our hearts and our own.
Okay, so
We contain.
Sandra had it almost, she said,
Yeah.
right. Okay, thank
Okay.
you, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I just want to see if there's any rushes here. Well, you know, I don't actually know if I need to do the rushes today. So I'll teach you one, I'll share one other thing about this thorn bush. So there's something about the thorn bush, the snare, that Rebbe Nachman teaches that the snare is a kind of a bush that had a five-leafed, it had 5 leaves, all connecting to a point, like a myrtle branch that we use for the 4 species for Sukkot. We have a myrtle has three leaves that all come to a point, like you have the stem and there are 3 leaves that are attached at the same point. So Rebbe Nachman says, a teaching, that the snare is a 5-leafed bush. It wasn't just any kind of a thorn bush. It had 5 leaves. So the 5 leaves, there's a lot of 5. There's a lot of 5s. But Rebbe Nachman says, and I'm going to try and say this in a good way, that first of all, there's a lot of, before we get to the 5 leaves, there's a lot of imagery in the thorn bush not being consumed. The thorn bush is something, there's so many things going on. Like, before I tell you what I think of all the imagery, what do you think the imagery is of a thorn bush burning and Hashem speaking from within the thorn bush and the thorn bush not being consumed? Like, what do you think, like if you were deconstructing, what do you think the symbolism of all of those things are?
The 2 can, in a supernatural way, that's Malamin Atava, that the 2 can coexist together. And
Yes.
it's not a normal thing that you can do. You can only do this if it was in a supernatural type of way, which is Hashem, who's also a supernatural is not the right word. It's
Transcending of nature. So there's a,
Malamin Atava, yeah.
looking at this is already, like, if you want to say it's coming attractions, you know, look at this space, we're going to start seeing things that are above nature, because right here in the beginning here we got something that is transcending natural laws. So that's already
That's
one.
what I was thinking about. I was thinking about if we have a thorn bush and it's on fire and the fire is not consuming the thorn bush, then there's something unusual about the fire, or there's something unusual about the thorn bush, or both.
Both.
Yeah,
Right.
Anything unusual about both?
yeah.
Okay, anybody? So the thorn bush has a quality to it that it's not being consumed. And the fire has a quality to it as well, that even though it's burning up the bush, it's not hurting the bush. In other words, it's surrounding the bush and it seems to be consuming the bush, but it's actually not hurting the bush. So it's a special fire and it's a special bush.
Like
I
how
don't know
the
if I was-
Jewish people are going to be. Look at, we're surrounded, especially Israel is surrounded by all these thorns. And in right, and in the middle, they can try and try, but we're still there. Our heart, the heart, and our fire.
I so love that I asked you to give me all these answers, because you're answering all the questions that I have written down in my note. Anything else? Because I need,
If I was gonna look at it metaphorically,
yes.
it's, you know, God is there, or God's voice is there. To me, it's kind of like, you know, it's a symbol of our souls, that, you know, God speaks to us through our souls, and our souls they're burning, but they're eternal. They don't burn out.
My goodness, you're hitting every one of the 5 things. So, Susan, I'm coming to you in a second, but our souls are burning, but they don't burn out. So, in a way, this is like a deep idea of Hasidus, that our soul yearns to go to Hashem, and it yearns to join with Hashem, but it doesn't. It stays without disappearing. It actually doesn't disappear into the fire. It keeps its own identity as a soul. Thank you for that. And Susan.
The fact that it's a thorn bush, not a, you know, a raspberry bush or another kind of, is what a thorn, a flower such as a rose, a shoshana, is both beautiful and pointy, sticky, you know, could cause some harm. That
Right.
combination of beauty and watch out, some energy in that area.
Yes, yes, a thorn bush is painful. And, you know, if you get caught in a thorn bush, you don't, you know, thorns in your flesh, that's very painful. So,
Like
in
a cave was a thorn bush, wasn't it?
say again?
Wasn't a Cadus Yitzhak also the ram was stuck in a
Oh,
thorn?
stuck in a snare. I think you're right. Yes.
But another
You
Wow.
also have to like wonder, you know, that the fire is not consuming the thorn bush. What are we being told there? Like, you know, you've got God's voice, you've got light that fire is normally, you know, it's destructive and creative, right? But in this case, it's not destroying anything, and it's not destroying the thorns. Like, as if there's something being said there, that God is purposely having us deal with these thorns.
Well, on
He's
the
not
one hand,
burning them away.
but maybe if we, the thorn bush, and we, the ones that are experiencing trouble, or, you know, but I hear what
Creating
you're
it.
saying. In other words, the thorn bush could be the cause of the problems, and that's also not being consumed.
Yeah, but also like that there's a purpose for, I mean, not to sound like Pollyanna, but that there's a purpose for going through the fire, so to speak, right? You know,
Right.
that just like
Oh.
when you press the oil, you know, that there's some work that we have to do. It's not going to be done all for us.
Well, lady, I must say that I wanted to get to 5 explanations, because remember the snare has 5 leaves, and your answers gave me all 5. So now I'm going to tell you, put it together, that Rabbi Nachman says that in order to get out of Egypt, in order to get to the light, in order to get out of this constrictive experience of galut, of exile, we need the 5 powers of the soul, and we need the 5 representatives of those 5 powers of the soul. We need chesed, we need gevura, we need Tiferet, we need Netzach, and we Hod. So,
You translate those for everyone?
yes,
Yes.
I will. So Chesed, we need kindness. Chesed, we need kindness. Let me see.
Gevura, we need, is that
Shame.
Gevura,
Shame.
judgment, right?
Gevura, we need Gevura, we need we have to experience pain sometimes. Suffering comes from a constriction. Gevura is constriction. Just like Helene said, sometimes the thorn in our side, the very suffering aspect is what's going to help us wake up, get to where we're going. So the chesed is one aspect. We need the gevura. We need the tiferet, which is compassion. So we said that the fire was burning, but it didn't actually burn up the thorn bush. That's an aspect of compassion. We need, so that's Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's Chesed, Gevur, and Tiferet. The fire says, that's not enough, Moshe. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and all those qualities that they taught us are not enough to get this people out of Egypt. We need you and your brother, you and Aaron. You have to get involved as well. We need Netzach and we need Hod. We need this capacity that won't be consumed, that the thorn bush will survive. It will not be consumed. We need that. That is the Netzach quality. And then the quality that Linda said, we need the Hod quality, in that the soul of the Jew is like the fire, that it's or not the fire, the bush itself doesn't get consumed, in a way that the soul, in its glory of God, in its acknowledgement of God, still retains its identity. I'm going to say all of those again. So all those 5 things. So from Avraham is the idea of kindness and goodness, and Avraham teaches us that God is everywhere. Even in a thorn bush, there's godliness. In everything, there's godliness. In suffering, there's godliness. In Egypt, there's godliness. In a thorn bush, there's godliness. Godliness is all encompassing. And in all experiences, there's godliness. And it's, even though it might be concealed chesed, everything we experience in the world, even a fire burning a bush, is God's chesed. So that's, in a way, the lessons from chesed. Then the lessons from Gevurah, from Yitzchak, that we said already, Hashem is with us experiencing our pain, that we sometimes have to go through pain. It's instructive. It serves a purpose, as painful as it is. If we believe everything is good, comes from God, then even this constriction God is with us in that suffering. Then from Yaakov, this idea that Suri said, that this combining of opposites, Yaakov is the one who can integrate opposites, Tiferet, bring a harmony, the fire and water being able to be together, the fire and the bush being able to be together, this idea of paradoxes and opposites being able to, but it's Hashem's compassion, that's Yaakov's midah, Hashem's compassion, that the bush isn't actually burnt to a cinder. It burns, but it's still there. It's not consumed. The aspect of Netzach from Moshe Rabbeinu, that the Jewish people will never be consumed. Nothing can consume us. No fire can consume us, can consume our souls, because we're part of God. We are an eternal people. And the last thing from Aaron, that we don't expire, that we run to Hashem and we come back. We run and we come back, that we don't expire. Even this, on the one hand, we could be the bush, but on the other hand, we could be the fire. But all of those things continue to have their presence.
Say the last word again, the last one.
So Aaron is representing this aspect of humility and surrender. So you could think that when the soul surrenders itself to God, it disappears. But here it doesn't disappear. It's burning, but it doesn't get consumed. It burns, but it still retains its separate identity. The Jewish soul still retains its separate identity.
What's that last one called?
Oh,
Hod
Hod?
translates, I like to translate it as surrender, but or acknowledgement. From hoda'ah means to acknowledge, or gratitude, gratefulness,
Right,
all
hodu.
related to those qualities. And so those are, and then we have lots of, fives. We have, a lot of fives, but that's the, so that was some of the things we can learn from the bush. And just this idea of Moshe turning to look, that we always have to be open and curious, because we don't know from where our salvation is coming. And only when Moshe pays attention and he sees what's not normal and what's not regular, and he's alert with curiosity to what's going on, then Hashem calls him, and then he says, Hineni. So I have one other little thing to end with, because this is already a lot and it's pretty amazing, but this last piece is also very beautiful, and I kind of want to share it, even though we're already at 9 o'clock. So I just want to go a little bit longer, and here. Yeah. So Hashem is talking to Moshe, and Moshe is sort of saying, who am I to go to Pharaoh? I'm not really important. And Hashem says, I'll be with you. And then this beautiful thing, Yaakov, can you read it? It's Pasuk 13. You can read it in English.
English is okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And Moses said to God, behold, I come to the children of Israel, and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them?
And the next one, 14.
God said to Moses, Eya Asher Eya, I will be what I will be. And he said, so shall you say to the children of Israel, Eya, I will be, has sent me to you.
Okay, so I just think this is so incredible. So Moshe says, okay, so the Jews have been suffering for 87 years. You were nowhere to be seen. Pharaoh is bathing in the blood of Jewish children. We've had oppression like you can't believe. Where have you been? Now you appear. Who do I tell them? Like Leonard Cohen sings in that song, who do I say is calling? Who do I tell them? Who are you? And Hashem says, tell them I am that I am. What do you think of that as a name? Like, what do you think of that as a name? I am that
He
I am.
wants it to be mystical. He doesn't want to be so straightforward and just say a name. It's vague.
Very vague.
I am who I am. But that's like, okay, that
I'm
doesn't.
like Lakash. I am what I am, and I'm no illusion.
Okay, so so
Well, also it's in future tense.
well,
So it's like a constant. It's in future tense. It's a constant state of becoming.
well, it's future, present, and past, actually.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, asher ihyeh. It's haya hoveh v'yihi.
Ah,
Was I am, I will be is actually the full name, really. It's
in-
like a
But-
constant
Oh.
state of being and becoming.
yeah.
Right?
It's
So
amazing.
such an interesting name. And Hashem says, I want you to use this name. So the Midrash says that Hashem is usually called according to his different functions. So when he's Kael Shaddai, That's the God, I think, of creation, the God that says enough. Like, we'll have light going till this moment, we'll have this much of wingspan on a bird, we'll have this length on a tail, Kael Shaddai, the God of judgment. And also I read here the God that tolerates sins, but Kael Shaddai, there's a certain aspect of judgment in that name. Then there's Savakot, the God that wages war. Then there's Elohim, a God, hidden in nature, also a little bit of judgment over there. And the name Havaya, that's a name, of compassion, a name of kind of transcending nature. There's a lot of aspects in that God. But when Moshe says, where have you been? What do I tell them? Tell them that I am isness. I was with them in their pain, just like I was in the thorn bush. I was there. I was there. I am here. I will be. I'm always with you, even when you don't see me, even when I'm not doing a specific thing. The nature of me is I am. I was with them. I am with them. I will be with them, even when you don't see me or they didn't see me. I am this isness. That is, it's not even an action. It's like there's a conversation of the God's 7 holy names, and they're all holy because there's some aspect of God removed from daily life. This is not included in that name. This is a name that's just is in the thick of everyday reality. It's not even a holy name, because a holy name suggests a separateness, a higher than aspect. This is just, I'm absolutely, totally with you in reality all the time. If you cannot see me, it's not because I am so ethereal, but because I am so real and so part of everything. It's kind of a little, I
think-
don't know if that's
I think-
anticlimactic, but it's very deep.
You know what? I think that it's right, like what you're saying. It's, I will be what I will be. It's sort of, I said it before, I don't want to like use the word mysterious, but like you don't know what I can be, but I will be what I will be, and just stay tuned and you'll see what I can be.
Yes, I
Because
like
that's
that.
what he wants to
too.
convince. He wants to convince B'nai Yisrael, if he just says, I'm God, they'll say, well, what's that? So he has to give them some type of name that will keep them intrigued and but a
Yes,
little bit mystical.
and
Serious.
it's true, God goes beyond all previous experiences. He does plagues, he turns things upside down, and it is mysterious, but it is an incredible statement of isness. And what is the statement of isness? What is isness? And what is the benefit of isness? And what is isness? And why should we know? And why should we care? And what is it something that we should strive for? What is isness? Because I think if we, so you're looking a little confused.
Well,
No,
it's
it's
a
no, we
deep
don't have-
question.
Hmm?
I can't give you an answer, Bracha. You like to ask these questions of. I
If
think,
we can
Sandra,
get,
come on, you can do
I'll
it.
give you a hint. I'll give you a hint, and I don't know, maybe Susan's, oh, she's still there. If we can get comfortable with our isness, we can get over our guilt. We can get over our striving to be something else. We could start loving ourselves. We could start being
Okay.
like
So
human
essence.
being as
Yeah, and
opposed to human doing. Okay, Linda first.
just that, it's important to be able to accept all of it, everything that we are, everything that existence is, everything that is being, all our good, our bad, our flaws, our, everything.
All those
All the
words
pain.
that you're saying, our good, our bad, our flaws, our good, our bad. What's the common denominator there? Judgment.
It
Acceptance,
makes up
yeah.
us.
Judgment. That is the tree. Which tree is good and bad and all out? What tree is
Oh,
that?
the eight
The eight
Hadas.
us.
The eight
Is it the
Hadas.
tree of life or is it tree of knowledge of good and bad?
With knowledge.
Right.
Yeah, the
Knowledge.
With
eight
knowledge.
Hadas.
Was the tree of knowledge of good and bad a good tree or not the best tree?
It had the potential to be, it wasn't supposed to be touched, so really it was a bad tree, but it has potential
I
to
don't
be
know.
good.
I think it was a good tree, but we weren't ready for it yet.
Well, right, they weren't supposed
why-
to eat.
Okay.
So, like at an essence level, like what is isness? Isness is God. There is nothing else but God. So isness is God, and therefore, not to say that we're all like God, but we all, there is nothing but God. So everything that exists is actually God. So there is no bad. We just can't see it. And I know that sounds crazy, but
No,
I
that's
think
exactly the answer I'm looking for. That's where we want to go with this because we're so caught up in the tree of good and bad, knowledge of good and bad, that we constantly in judgment. We're in judgment of ourselves, we're in judgment of others, we're in judgment of the experiences that happen to us. This is a good experience, this is a bad experience, this is good for me, this is bad for me. If we could move to isness, this is what it is. God is everything. God is always good. I just don't, I'm not there that I feel it or I experience it, but there's something about getting to a place of isness that is actually like the next step in our evolution where we can kind of be with what is without so much
Acceptance, you mean?
judgment on ourselves and try to
Acceptance, yeah.
acceptance and love. Like when I started off and I was talking about this quality of love, that Albert Einstein was speaking about, the energy of the world of love. It's very powerful energy when you're not constantly judging another. Do I like them? I don't like them. Are they being good? Like even I could tell myself with my husband, is he being nice to me right now? Or is he not being nice to me? Am I happy with what he's saying? Or I'm not happy with he's saying. Just be with me, and I'm always like like it's very, it's not evolved, it's Mitzrayim-ish, it's constricted. It's much more geulaness to be in that. It is, a person is, we don't have to be evaluating ourselves and everyone around us, and our experiences always evaluating good, bad, right, wrong. We need to have a moral code, but not right, wrong. When you hurt another person, what there's it's not that we throw morality out the door and we just go to tohu and vohu, but this constant judging is not serving us in the right way. So we can talk about it more. We've gone late. Maybe we can wrap it up for now, but it's something you can think about.
Can I just say
Quality
one
of
more?
isness. And when Hashem says, I am that I am, I was there, I am, I will be, I'm with you through everything you're going through. I didn't, disappear. You don't understand why you had to go through what you had to go through, but you had to go through it. And I'm going to be with you to get you out of it. Yeah, Yakova.
I was just going to say that, like Hashem made all the trees, Hashem made both trees in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. He made both of them. And to say that Adam and Eve made a mistake or did something wrong is to mean that put them in a position of God. I mean, Hashem's in charge of everything. And, it may look like, bad things were done there, but it was all meant to be. It was all meant to happen.
Well, that is a very pivotal question and one we could talk about for a long time. But what happened was, like Helene said, we didn't have the tools to deal with our ability to handle the good and bad interplay.
But Hashem knew that.
No, but
Yeah.
Hashem said don't. Hashem said
Hashem
don't.
told us not. If we would have waited
said
for
no.
Shabbos and we would have had the tree on Shabbos, we would have had the vessels to connect to the good and bad duality in a
But
more.
maybe it wasn't time for that to happen yet.
It
Yeah,
wasn't,
because
it
then
was
we never
time.
would have had any work to do.
Well, listen, all of our life, all of our existence is kind of dealing with the effects and the after effects of that act. And, we're trying to get back into Gan Eden. We're trying to get back to expanded consciousness. We're trying to get to a place of Mochen de Gadlut, expanded consciousness. And I'm just asking you to hold in your contemplations this idea of isness as opposed to judgment around our own experiences, our own personalities, our own day-to-day being. And I think that what I've been led to believe by some of my teachers is if we can be more in isness with our life, joyful, happy, besimcha in the isness, rather than the constant evaluating and judging, that it might be an interesting experience for us and offer us some new ways of being. But, did they do the right thing? Was it a setup? These are very deep philosophical questions about, original, that moment. I mean, maybe it was a setup, maybe they had to do that, but we've been dealing with the consequences of it since then. And the messianic goal is to try and get to some place that they might have been at before things got, they say, the capacity of working with good and bad got integrated in us in a way that wasn't the most evolved. And we're trying to get it more evolved.
But we know that if Adam hadn't done that, then it would have been eternal, like the Geula would be there, and this whole thing would not have happened. So
right.
I know it's an advanced, there's like a lot of things to say about it, but the bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
Go
So
ahead, Sandra. I see what.
Our whole experience has been dealing with that. And if they
Right.
waited until Shabbos and eaten the tree of, good, right and wrong, or goodness and badness on Shabbos, they would have had the vessels to deal with it. We would have been in eternal bliss, and we wouldn't have had the American Mall, and we wouldn't have Doritos or burritos or, Bumba, who knows? Okay, Sandra.
Thank you, Holland. There was a phenomenal lecture that I listened to by Rabbi Manis Friedman, who discusses what you're exactly talking about. And he said, Eve knew, or Chava knew, that she had to eat or get Adam to eat from the apple because the world had to be perfected, and it was by our intervention. That's why this whole thing happened. I'm sorry, excuse me, it's my voice, but go look up Manis Freeman and this lecture. You're going to be blown away by it.
Well, listen,
Shoot,
all of our
Send us the
experience,
link.
all of our experience is the processing of that choice and that, and trying to deal with it and trying to kind of do the work that choice opened and made available to us.
In Gan Eden, we didn't work for it. We didn't earn it,
Right.
So maybe that had to happen because we have to earn it. We have to.
Well, that is a constant, they say a yerida in order for there to be an aliyah. We had to go down to kind of earn it to bring it up. So, yeah. So thank you for everybody's contribution. This was very lovely that everyone was that involved and engaged. And I'm happy Devorah came. If you want to hear Devorah, the beginning of it, we'll record it and I'll send the recording on the WhatsApp chat. You could hear what you missed. And I want to wish everyone a beautiful week. Next week, I will be in Miami.
Enjoy.
This retreat
Yes.
with Shimon Tzukonik. So
She's
I won't
wonderful.
really be so in control of my schedule. There's Sarabina. If I guess we will plan on it not happening if I can record some stuff, because I am teaching a little bit a couple lunches I'm giving over Pasha. Maybe I can record it and post it or something,
Oh,
but
that'd be nice.
officially don't count on next week, but then we will resume the week after. But I will keep you posted with the WhatsApp chat. And
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
for a
you so
fantastic
much.
class.
Yes, thank you,
Oh,
Bracha.
have a great trip.
So,
Wonderful.
Yeah,
much.
you
we're
too.
happy to
Thank
talk.
you.
Have a
Great
good trip.
experience all the way around. Yeah.
Okay, all the best.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
By
you.
that time,
Thank
it's gonna
you.
be
Bye-bye.
2 parshes ahead of time, so it'll be past like the juicy part of the story. But that's
Yeah,
okay.
so I'll
You'll
try,
complete
if I
it, yeah.
can do something while I'm away, I will try, but it might be a little
No, I'm just
things going on.
thinking
Yeah,
what's gonna
okay.
be.
Hi,
Thank
Devorah, nice to see your face.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi,
Oh,
Liz.
now you
Feel
see me in a
better, everyone.
shaitel, Devorah. You haven't seen me in a shaitel. It's my like Torah.
So,
Yeah.
thank
Okay.
you.
All the best. Good night. Good night.
Good night.